Imagine this. You're on a routine flight, just another trip across the sky, when suddenly, a violent storm forces an emergency landing. But instead of safety, you find yourself trapped on a remote island, controlled by ruthless rebels. No backup, no escape, just a downed plane, terrified passengers, and a desperate fight for survival. Now throw in a battle-hardened pilot who will do anything to protect his crew and a mysterious prisoner with a dark past, both forced to work together against all odds. This isn't just any flight gone wrong. This is Plane 2023, where the real danger begins after the crash. Buckle up, because this is one hell of a ride. Brodie Torrance is no stranger to the skies. As a seasoned pilot and former RAF officer from Scotland, he has faced his fair share of challenges in the air, but nothing could prepare him for what awaits on this fateful journey. Tasked with commanding Trailblazer Airlines Flight 119, Brodie prepares for what should be a routine trip across the Pacific. The flight, departing from Singapore, is bound for Honolulu with a brief stop in Tokyo, carrying 14 passengers and 3 cabin crew members. Among those on board is a man who stands out from the usual travelers, a fugitive named Louis Gaspare, accused of homicide and escorted by a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP officer on his way to Canada to face justice. Despite his criminal record, Louis sits quietly, shackled and compliant, his presence an unspoken source of tension among the passengers. As the plane ascends and settles into its route, the atmosphere remains calm, the hum of the engines steady. But far ahead, trouble is brewing. A massive storm system looms over their path, dark clouds swallowing the horizon like an impending omen. Brodie, always one to prioritize safety, considers adjusting the flight path to avoid the turbulence. However, when he contacts airline control, the response is clear. He is to stick to the planned route. Deviating now would cost fuel and disrupt scheduling. Though hesitant, Brodie complies with the orders, unaware that this seemingly minor decision will set off a chain of events that will push him, his crew, and his passengers to the very edge of survival. Minutes pass, and the first signs of turbulence ripple through the cabin, causing nervous glances among the passengers. The ride becomes increasingly rough, the plane shaking violently as it enters the heart of the storm. Then, disaster strikes. A sudden, blinding flash of light explodes across the cockpit as a bolt of lightning slams into the aircraft. In an instant, the avionics fail. The screens flicker, then go black. The familiar beeping of warning alarms fills the cabin as Brodie and his co-pilot scramble to regain control. But the damage is done. The plane is no longer responding, their navigation and communication systems completely fried, leaving them flying blind in the middle of the vast South China Sea. Panic spreads as the aircraft shudders violently, dropping in altitude. The sudden chaos proves deadly. A flight attendant and the RCMP officer are thrown against the cabin with bone-crushing force, their bodies lifeless before they even hit the ground. The remaining passengers scream, gripping their seats as the aircraft hurtles downward. With every second, their chances of survival grow slimmer. But Brodie, his military instincts kicking in, refuses to surrender to panic. Gritting his teeth, he makes the only call he can. He must land the plane now at any cost. With no way to call for help and no clear sight of land, Brodie searches desperately for a place to put the plane down. The cockpit window is battered by rain and wind, making visibility nearly impossible. But then, a glimpse of land. A narrow dirt strip emerges through the storm, barely distinguishable against the thick jungle beyond. It's far from ideal, but it's their only option. With a firm grip on the controls, Brody braces for impact. The landing is brutal. The wheels slam into the uneven terrain, the fuselage groaning under the force as the plane bounces and skids along the makeshift runway. Metal screeches, sparks fly, and for a moment, it feels as if the aircraft will tear apart before it comes to a shuddering halt. Silence falls. The passengers, still shaken, exchange stunned glances, realizing they are alive, but stranded. Relief quickly turns to fear as they take in their surroundings. This isn't just any remote island. Unbeknownst to them, they have just crash-landed in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Jolo Island, a lawless territory controlled by heavily armed rebels. And their nightmare is only beginning. Thousands of miles away, in the heart of New York City, a crisis is unfolding behind the glass walls of Trailblazer Airlines headquarters. The moment the control center loses contact with Flight 119, alarms sound, sending shockwaves through the corporate chain of command. The airline's crisis manager, David Scarsdale, is the first to be briefed. A man known for his cold, calculated decisions, Scarsdale wastes no time assessing the situation. A commercial airliner has vanished over the South China Sea, and the last known trajectory places it dangerously close to a region notorious for armed insurgents and militant groups. Every second counts. As the investigation begins, satellite imaging confirms what everyone fears. The plane has crash-landed on Jolo Island, a hostile territory controlled by rebels. The worst-case scenario is already in motion. Scarsdale, well aware that relying on international authorities would take too long, makes a drastic decision. Instead of waiting the 24 hours it would take for a proper rescue operation, he bypasses bureaucracy altogether, reaching out to a highly trained mercenary unit, a team of specialists equipped to handle extreme extractions in dangerous territories. Their mission is simple: get in, secure the passengers, and get out before the island becomes a graveyard. But back on Jolo Island, Brody Torrance has no knowledge of what's happening in New York. Right now, he has only one goal: get a message out before it's too late. Time is running out, and every moment wasted increases the danger for his crew and passengers. With no radio, no functioning avionics, and no sign of help on the horizon, the only choice left is to go out and find it himself. But he can't do it alone. Among the passengers, there's only one person with the skill set to navigate the unknown alongside him: Louis Gasparet, the mysterious fugitive accused of homicide. Shackles no longer bound to his wrists. Louis is no ordinary criminal. He carries himself like a soldier, moving with precision and confidence. Though Brody doesn't fully trust him, he knows that right now survival outweighs morality. Together, the two set off into the dense, unforgiving jungle, pushing through the thick foliage in search of anything that might help them reach civilization. After a grueling trek, they stumble upon a rundown warehouse, its rusted structure barely standing against the humid island air. Inside, remnants of old equipment hint at past human activity, possibly from an abandoned military outpost or an old smuggling operation. Brody quickly gets to work, using his aviation knowledge to rig a working connection through a dusty landline and a damaged power source. His fingers move with urgency as he dials, hoping for a miracle. Then, it happens. A faint connection. A lifeline. The static-filled signal barely holds, but it's enough. He manages to reach the airline, his voice a desperate plea through the crackling line. Then, in a rare moment of vulnerability, he calls his daughter, his voice breaking as he reassures her, telling her to stay strong and that he's coming home. The call is brief, but it's enough to pinpoint their location, enough to bring hope that help might actually come. But hope is short-lived. The moment the call ends, the warehouse door bursts open. A rebel soldier, armed and merciless, lunges at Brody. The two men crash into the ground in a violent struggle, fists flying, bones cracking against steel. He barely manages to overpower and kill the insurgent, his breathing ragged as he wipes the blood from his hands. But the fight isn't over yet. Lewis, watching from the shadows, moves like a ghost. Without hesitation, he eliminates several more rebels who had been lurking nearby, proving his combat experience is far beyond that of a common criminal. As the bodies fall, a horrifying realization dawns upon them. This isn't just a random group of bandits. This island is home to a brutal faction of militants who specialize in hostage-taking. Their modus operandi is clear. Capture foreigners, hold them for ransom, and execute anyone who resists. And they are already too late. Racing back to the plane, Brody and Lewis emerge from the jungle just in time to witness the unthinkable. The rebels have arrived first. A convoy of heavily armed men, led by the ruthless Datu Junmar, now surrounds the aircraft like predators circling wounded prey. The passengers, still dazed from the crash, are dragged from the plane, their terrified screams lost in the chaos. Any sign of resistance is met with swift, merciless violence. A couple attempts to flee, but their bodies hit the ground before they can take another step. The message is clear: obey or die. Helpless, Brody and Louis watch as their people are taken hostage and march deep into the jungle, leaving only bloodstains and bullet casings behind. The time for waiting is over. Brody Torrance and Louis Gasbury ambush two rebels, forcing them to reveal the hostages' location before eliminating them. Leaving a note for rescuers, they infiltrate the rebel camp, freeing the passengers and leading them to an abandoned bus. Brody stays behind as a distraction, but just as he's about to be executed, mercenaries hired by Trailblazer Airlines storm in, triggering a brutal firefight. Amid the chaos, Lewis vanishes into the jungle with ransom money. Brody and his co-pilot restart. Flight 119 as rebels close in. Datu Junmar aims an RPG, but the plane's landing gear takes him out as they take off. With the aircraft failing, Brody makes a risky landing on a nearby island, where emergency crews finally arrive. Exhausted but victorious, he steps away, knowing he has done the impossible, brought everyone home. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.